Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the marvelous youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. What's going on today, buddy?
Not too much. Had some freelance writing to do this morning for some high schools in Wisconsin. Their fall sports are getting over with. And then I had a shift over Atlanta 10, doing some Big Ten stuff. Something that I actually want to talk about on this show with you later, Troy. An article I read up on there by one of my colleagues intrigued me. But just looking forward to talking college football with you. And we are also 1 week away. We're recording this on a Monday. But Halloween night is when the first college football playoff rankings get released. And that's the ranking system that actually matters, even though we talk about the AP every week. That college football playoff rankings is what determines the top four teams in college football at the end of the year. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now that we are 8 weeks into the season now.
We certainly are. And like you, I'm excited to see how that poll rolls out because we've talked about this. You look at the top of that AP top 25 every week, maybe the top guys are there, but the rest of that, well, I guess you can throw Wisconsin in there too, being up there at 5. But when you look at how much change has happened between that 5 and 11 spot, and we usually go to 11 because it used to be 4 Big Ten teams in the top 11. But when you look at all the change, Kevin, that's went on between 5 and 11, I'm not sure how this is going to roll out for the playoff. You look at those top 4 teams in there outside of the upsets that happened with Ohio State, Oklahoma. You look at the current top 4, outside of that from 5 to 11, a lot of question marks. And how is that going to play out through the rest of the year? And are the top 4 AP top 25 teams going to be the 4 teams in the playoff according to that committee? It could be totally different. We don't know because the top 25 is not concurrent with that playoff, like you said, but it's a guide. And you're looking at these teams, and what we've noticed in the top 25, a lot of big jumpers and a lot of big droppers. You win, you're like on the fast track up the hill. You lose, you're like the dominoes. You just keep on falling. That's the way that it worked. With the top 25, the College Football Playoff Committee a little bit different. So I'm excited for that. But honestly, Kevin, the last couple of weeks, our AP Top 25 review, we've got pretty in-depth. We've had a lot to talk about. This week, boring. That's how I'm going to put the top 25. Not saying the games were boring. Just saying that there's no big upsets. There's no big jumps. What are we going to talk about in the top 25? You're going to have to read a list. That's what you're going to have to do today. Just read the list top to bottom, 1 through 25, because there's really not much going on here. I mean, there's some movement, don't get me wrong, but normally we're talking about, whoa, we don't agree with this team jumping up 5 spots. We don't agree with this team dropping 10. There's not a lot of that this week. It's, again, pretty boring, but like every week, going to turn it back over to you. Go through the top 25 if you want to. I don't care. I'm going to follow your lead. Do what you want with this top 25.
Yeah, we'll go through the top. I guess it won't necessarily be 25. We'll actually stop at 16. But Michigan is, well, I'll get to Michigan. They're not in the top 25 anymore. But so usually, like you said, Troy, we have these games that we can talk about, and oh my God, why did Washington State jump up 10 spots after that win, and why did Oklahoma State drop 14 spots after that loss? Not that drastic, but pretty close. And this week, this past weekend, there was 0 teams from the top 10 that lost. The only team from the top, I think it was 15 that lost, was number 11 USC, and they lost to number 13 Notre Dame. 13 Notre Dame moved up to number 9 in this week's rankings, so they didn't have this, insane jump up that we've kind of been seeing.
At least I expected the winner of that game between those two to probably break the top 10 because it was, as far as rankings go, close in the rankings. I figured whoever won that game would probably be right on the brink of the top, going into the top 10. maybe 10, maybe 9. So I'm okay with that. I figured you're playing another ranked opponent right by you. I thought the winner would probably be right there at 9 or 10. So to me, that move is a logical move, and I expected it.
Yeah, it makes sense because and now you're starting to get one-loss teams like Notre Dame and comparing them with other one-loss teams. And so are they better than Ohio State? Are they better than Clemson? Most AP voters voted no. They're also worse than Miami of Florida. Barely, according to the AP voters, Miami hasn't lost yet. They're 6-0, even though they haven't looked great in their 6 wins. But apparently Notre Dame is better than Oklahoma. That's also very slight. I mean, a couple voters making a few changes here and there could, change some of these spots when looking at 1 spot, 2 spots here and there. But that was the only real action in the top 20. As far as teams 21 to 25, I didn't even care to look because there was no Big Ten teams. There was no huge movers from there last week. But the only other top 20 team that lost was Michigan, obviously, which we care about on this show. And so Michigan dropped from, I think they were 19 because Michigan State was 18. Michigan was 19. They obviously lost to Penn State by 29 points on Saturday night, and it affected them. They're out of the top 25. They are now in the other receiving votes.
Michigan played this weekend, Kevin?
Sure didn't.
They had a
like
game? I thought they had a bye.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm being sarcastic, listeners, because it certainly didn't look like Michigan showed up to play in that game.
No. I mean, we were talking about a top 10 defense all along this season. We were talking about potentially the best defense in college football according to some certain statistics. But once you play against those juggernauts like a Penn State, things change. I mean, you have to throw certain things out the window, like we talked about a week ago with Ohio State just trampling their last 5 opponents. It's like, well, that's what happens if you play UNLV, Army, Rutgers, all these teams, Maryland, and their 4th-string quarterback. That's what should happen. Occasionally you'll get the Clemson-Syracuse upset, the Washington State getting pummeled upset. There was another one, Washington lost to a team that was not very good. I think it was Arizona State. There were a number of upsets a week ago, I think it was, that were very shocking because that's not supposed to happen. Usually you'll see like 1 or 2 of those maybe each week, not like 5 like there was last week. But this week there just wasn't that. But so Michigan is now kind of the 27th ranked team, so to say, quote unquote, based on the number of votes they have. They're only behind Texas A&M in terms of votes. That's really it. I mean, I'll list off the top 10 or 12, I guess, is interesting just because. But Alabama stayed at 1, Penn State stayed at 2, Georgia stayed at 3, TCU stayed at 4, Wisconsin stayed at 5, Ohio State stayed at 6, Clemson stayed at 7, Miami stayed at 8. I already mentioned Notre Dame jumping from 13 to 9. Oklahoma got passed. They went from 9 to 10. Oklahoma State got passed by Notre Dame. They went from 10 to 11. Washington State at 12. And that's kind of where I'll cut it off because past there, I don't think we've got any serious teams to mention. Michigan State moved up from 18 to 16. That's the only one that obviously is different there. But Virginia Tech's a team to look for in the ACC. NC State's a team to look for. They're 13 and 14, respectively. They're both 6 and 1. They control their own destinies. Washington State at 7 and 1. I'm sure if they won out, they'd control their own destiny. Same thing with Michigan State, which we'll talk about later in the show. And I guess I'll bring these 2 up as well. USF is 7 and 0. That's that top Power 5 school that I always talk about. They're up to 17. Actually, they moved down to 17. They were 16 a week ago. And Scott Frost and UCF, we talked about Scott Frost, Nebraska. Who knows what happens there? If Nebraska looks for a new head coach, UCF is now 6 and 0 after he took over I believe it was winless program 2 years ago. And then he made them like 500 his first year, and now they're 6 and 0. So he's doing an absolutely ridiculous job. He was over at Oregon coaching the offense there, which obviously Oregon can score points in recent history. We remember that. Now he's over at UCF, turning that program completely around. So the rumors are out there as to where he's going to go next. Obviously, he's going to get a Power 5 offer, but it's just a matter of where, realistically, at this point. So 3 top 6 Big Ten teams, Penn State at 2, Wisconsin 5, Ohio State 6, Michigan State at 16, and Michigan fell out of the top 25 for the first time all year. It seems as though we've got 3 elite teams in the country in the Big Ten, as opposed to the 4 like we were thinking, but we knew there were quarterback issues, offensive issues with Michigan. Kind of the same thing, kind of, with Wisconsin, except Alex Hornibrook has played better than what Michigan's quarterbacks have given them. That's really been the only true difference. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor's been doing his thing, but Michigan's been able to run the ball on most teams. The difference has really been quarterback play, and obviously you're seeing Michigan slipped up against Michigan State, but Michigan got blown out by Penn State, and Wisconsin just hasn't played a team to that caliber yet.
Well, I'm going to mention this, Kevin, about Michigan. I said it last week on the show. I had concerns about that defense, the way they let Indiana go down and score at the end of that game, and it was a legitimate concern. And you can parlay the defensive woes kind of to the offense. And why I say that is if the offense can't move the chains and they can't sustain drives, you don't have to score points every time, but if you can put together a 7-8 play drive, get 30, 40 yards and change field position, makes the day a lot easier for your defense. What Michigan is unable to do is move the ball. And when you do that and you can't move the chains and you can't sustain drives, your defense is on the field. I don't care who you are defensively. Even if you're in Alabama, you can't have your defense on the field all the time, stopping the other team. You need to change field position. You need to sustain some drives. And Michigan is having some problems right now. 27th to me, fine. Somebody wants to give them votes. I don't know why they even got any votes. I didn't expect to see Michigan in others receiving votes. I really didn't. I know it was against Penn State, but I joked earlier, did they show up to play? Because this was supposed to be a team that could be in the mix at the end. They're not even going to be close. And every week that goes by now, and I watch this, Kevin, I have more of a confidence level for Wisconsin getting to the Big Ten championship game, being on the brink of a national playoff. Now, I will also say this. Do I think they're good enough to be in the playoff? No, I don't. I still don't, even though they're 5. But as a fan, how can I not be excited about this? Michigan's playing like crap, and I can't say that Wisconsin's automatically going to win the other games. It's the Big Ten. They've got to go on the road. Every game is a tough game. I'm not just saying they're going to win every other game and then Michigan is the game. But that's the game that's circled as the toughest test. But right now I don't think that is the toughest test on their schedule because Michigan's not playing well. And I said last week, I'll take the Wisconsin defense over that Wolverine defense right now. Again, Saturday we're going to talk about the games. The Wisconsin defense scored again, Kevin. They know how to get the ball and they know how to take it to the end zone. They're helping their offense. Michigan's offense is not helping the defense at all. So I had to throw that in there because this Michigan defense has a ton of skill. But their offense is totally horrid right now. It can't do anything, and you can tell it's wearing on the defense because it is a good defense. I didn't think Penn State would be able to put that many points up on that Michigan team. I was thinking in the 20s. It didn't look like Michigan showed up. They're playing bad. Wanted to throw that out there.
Elite offense will beat elite defense, in my opinion, in college football more often than not. And I'm not going to say that a team with an elite defense can't beat a team with an elite offense. It's just rare that you see teams with those quote-unquote elite defenses have an offense to back itself up, kind of like Michigan where the offense doesn't back up the defense. And so the defense suffers because of it eventually against top-tier offenses and teams like Penn State. Penn State's defense is also, I think, underrated in general. I think they've got a very good one. I don't think it's unbelievable top 5, but I think it's top 10, top 15. I think it's absolutely good enough to win a championship with. But so you look at Wisconsin, and that's kind of the question with them is, will the offense kind of hold the defense back? And just my thought in general is if you have a team like Wisconsin where its offense is probably above average, you obviously have a really good running game, but throwing the ball, if you need to, we've talked about it on this show, and Troy's been adamant about it. If this team's down 2 scores, I highly doubt, me saying I as Troy, he doubts, I should say, that Wisconsin would come back in a game like that against an elite team because he doesn't believe in the offense being able to throw it. So things have to work out very well over the course of a game for Wisconsin to win a game the way it wants to. But so if you've got one of these elite defenses without an offense to support it and you're going against a Penn State type offense, in college football, it's so hard to stop these elite offenses because of the spread, because of the athletic advantage that those elite offenses have. Those elite offenses typically have multiple guys going to the NFL eventually, whether it's a Penn State, whether it's a USC, whether it's even a Washington. Oklahoma State's got a number of them. The quarterback is going to be drafted in the first couple days of the NFL draft. They've got a phenomenal wide receiver. These college offenses that are putting up 30-plus on everyone week after week, like a Penn State, those guys just have an athletic advantage over most teams. And so when you couple that with a defense that can support it like Penn State, and you play against one of these one-sided teams like Michigan, which only has a defense, it's just a matter of time until the offense scores 30, because we've seen that the last couple national championships with Clemson and Alabama, where both those teams have really good defenses, but they also had really good offenses. So that's why you would see both those teams in both games score at least 35 points in the national title game. It's not because the defenses are crap. It's just an elite offense in college football is so hard to just completely shut down and keep in the 20s or the teens even. It's almost a given that Penn State in a big game this year is going to score 30-plus. It's almost a given that Alabama will be able to score 30-plus because their quarterback is actually able to throw the ball along with his legs that he can use. So I just think there's such an advantage to elite offenses in college football. That's why I've noted teams from the get-go, the start of this year, that teams like Alabama who can score with most teams, Penn State who can score. Even Georgia has proven that they can score. I didn't think that they would be able to at the level they have, but they've proven it. Ohio State recently has proven it, but they have to do it against Penn State this week to really sell myself. Clemson had a freshman quarterback. He's proved it while he's been healthy anyway. Oklahoma has shown that they can score with teams, Oklahoma State. I just think it's harder to beat those teams with elite offenses if you don't have an offense that can typically keep up itself. It doesn't have to be as good, but you've got to be able to throw the ball and run the ball, in my opinion, in college football nowadays. If there's anything else you want to add to that, Troy, before I move on, feel free.
No, I agree with you, and that's why I say, as a fan, I'm excited where Wisconsin's at, but as, you know, the host of this show with you, Wisconsin's not even in the mix. You know, I'll go back, and I know we'll preview the games in a little bit, but Wisconsin's a front-running team, and what I mean by that is they got to play with the lead. And so what did the defense do in the first quarter? Oh, they just scored 6 points. So there you go. There you go, offense. Let Taylor run. Let him go. And they're in the lead. And they can kind of dictate the tempo of the game. They're not going to get those – I shouldn't say they're not going to. It's a lot harder against a really good offense that doesn't turn the ball over, that has many more weapons. You're just, like you said, even this Wisconsin defense, I'm not worried about Michigan because of the way their offense is playing. But when you look at them playing against an Ohio State or a Penn State, what are they going to do? If Penn State gets up 14-3, Wisconsin's done. Wisconsin's done if Ohio State gets up on them 10-0. They're just not enough stops and not enough offensive firepower with Wisconsin to be able to hang in those games. You're hoping that your running game can bust a big play. Well, against teams that are in the top 10, you're not going to get probably those huge runs. You may, but very unlikely, because most of those teams that will be in that playoff have very good skilled players in the back at safety that can run him down. They're not going to let him get to the second level. He's not going to get in the open field. So that's where my concern is right there with Wisconsin, is that as a fan, I'm overly excited, Kevin. Overly excited. As a realist, Wisconsin, in my mind, part of me saying, do I want them to even have the chance? Because it could turn out to be, and I'll say this because I know you're an Ohio State guy, it could turn out to be what happened to Ohio State last year.
Yeah.
Not, and I don't want to say embarrassed. It's just get manhandled.
No, it was embarrassing to lose whatever it was, 31-0, whatever the final score was, to get to the college football playoff and just get slaughtered. That's not fun. That's not cool.
No, that's what I'm saying. You know, where my loyalty, of course, is with the Badgers. That's my home state. That's my team. But part of me is saying they're not ready to play on that stage. They're not ready. And you brought up the greatest points. It even happened in the Big Ten championship game. Look what Ohio State did to them, Kevin.
Yeah.
For Ohio State to get there. I mean, that's what happens to a Wisconsin team, and that's the way it's been. That's what we live and die with. That you've got to play from the front, and if your defense allows even 10 points, it's hard for a running team, and that's what Wisconsin is, a running team. Fair quarterback play. That's where I'm putting it. I still, again, until he's tested with adversity, I'm not sold on Hornibrook until I see it with my own eyes. And I don't think it's this year. Because the second part is, can you even name, Kevin, and I know you're a college football guy, can you name a receiver on the Badgers?
No.
And I was going to say, if you had to wait 2 seconds, no. Because they don't have the skill makers outside. Now, maybe in the future they will, but not this year. Not this year. So let's move on, unless there's anything else in the top 25. You know, we didn't get to spend a lot of time in the previous weeks because we spent more time on the top 25. This week we can really talk about some of these games and what our thoughts were. You can rib me for my lock of the week, which I was way wrong on, and hopefully nobody took my lock of the week because I would feel bad. But holy cow, let's just start there. Rutgers beating Purdue, Kevin. Got to give Rutgers some love. This is a team that we said might be the worst in the Big Ten. They've now got 2 wins in the Big Ten. So what's going on with Rutgers? I was totally wrong. I thought Purdue could move the ball, score points. Rutgers said, no, not at our house. You're not doing that, Purdue.
I don't know what's up with Rutgers' defense. I don't get it. Gus Edwards, the running back, senior running back, has been able to do things the last couple of weeks. The running game in general has been able to do things, although from a per carry average standpoint, they didn't do much against Purdue. They just ran it a bunch of times. Rutgers ran the ball 37 times in this game. Purdue threw it 44. Reason for that? I'm not sure, although you have to look at Purdue's running game, and they also ran the ball 41 times. I mean, Purdue just had a ton of plays. They just weren't able to capitalize. They had a couple interceptions that their quarterback threw, and Rutgers, if I'm not mistaken, didn't have any turnovers. No, they didn't. So if you've got a 2-turnover advantage and you're at home and your defense is playing well and you're able to run the ball somewhat successfully, it doesn't take much, and that's what Rutgers did. I mean, they won 14-12. Purdue had a 2-point conversion toward the end of the game to try and tie it, and they just missed it. I mean, very easily could have made the 2-point conversion and won an OT. I mean, that could have easily happened, obviously. So a very narrow victory for Rutgers, but they got a victory over what was seen as a decent offense in Purdue, and they kind of shut down Purdue's offense, and they were able to run the football. Again, I don't know really what to take from Rutgers winning these last couple weeks. Their defense played well in this one. Their rushing attack has played well the last couple weeks. I still think they are a bottom dweller in terms of the Big Ten, and I don't think they're on the same level necessarily as Purdue, although I don't think it's crazy off. I do think there is a difference there. I think there is a gap there. That little tiering system that I kind of mentioned a few weeks ago, where you've got some of the upper echelon Big Ten teams, then you've got like 9 or so middle of the pack Big Ten teams, and then you've got the bottom guys like Illinois right now and Rutgers. I didn't put Purdue in there, and I still don't, but maybe that gap is smaller than I thought it was. I guess the bottom of the middle tier to the bottom tier, I suppose, because maybe Rutgers is starting to build something. Maybe Chris Ash is starting to build something there that I just haven't noticed. And Illinois, I think it's easy to notice because of how young they are, how decent those freshmen are. You can see the progressions they're making, although it's not in final scores, whereas Rutgers is actually turning these games into victories. But yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to add on this game, but Rutgers is 3-4, 2-2 in the Big Ten. That's more than what
they're almost bowl eligible.
Yeah, they are. That's very true.
Now the thing is, for Rutgers, going to a bowl would be a big deal. It would be a huge deal for them. I wanted to ask you, youngster, do you have the stats up? Do you have the box score up for that game? I just want to know what Purdue's total yards were. There's actually a point to this. I have a method to my question.
I do. Let me see right here. Purdue. Oh man, I didn't notice this part of it, and I should have, because again, Purdue threw it 40 times. They ran it 40 times. They actually obviously outgained Rutgers, I should say. But looking at the stats, it really came down to those 2 turnovers. Purdue just couldn't finish. They had 25 first downs compared to Rutgers' 8, and Purdue had 470 total yards. Rutgers had 210.
This is what I take from the game, and I saw it firsthand when Purdue played Wisconsin. Purdue has a very good offense, Kevin. Very good in between the 20s. In between the 20s, they can move the sticks. They can move the ball. They choke. They choke when they get down by the goal line. They can't score. They can't finish. Saw it against Wisconsin. Major turnovers in the red zone. Major turnovers against Rutgers. They've got a very good offense. They can move the ball. They can move the sticks. They can gain chunks of yards. They can't finish. And that's the problem. You've got to figure it out. And I've always had this scratch my head kind of thought. How can a team be so effective in between the 20s and then get down there and just choke? We do an NFL show. We do a show for the Pittsburgh market. And we kind of talked about the Steelers and their red zone ineffectiveness with the talent they have. And we're wondering why they're not scoring touchdowns every time. I kind of get that same thought with Purdue. How can you keep moving the ball down the field, but then choke inside the red zone? Is it play calling? Is it skill level? Because it does get more congested in the red zone. We know that. I played football long ago, just nothing at the college level, nothing even in the high school level. I was a soccer guy, but I played before that, and I played defense. I played cornerback, and it gets more congested. You can do more defensively in the red zone, but Kevin, a lot of the great offensive minds are at the college level. Now, I'm not saying Purdue has a great offensive mind manning the offensive unit, but get creative. It seems like a lot of these teams, and I'm being general here, I'm not talking about Purdue in general. Now I've switched it to problems in the red zone with teams. It seems, Kevin, they get in the red zone and they get away from everything else that got them there. And it's like they get scared. Like, it's trying to get to a chess match. Like, well, what kind of defense are they going to play? Are they going to play cover 2? They're going to play man. What are they going to do? We got to out-chess match them. Just do what you've been doing that works. Why do teams all of a sudden get away from the things that are working? I don't understand that, Kevin. It's been one of those things that has always been that head-scratcher. Like, you got such a great offense. You just moved it down inside the red zone in 6 plays. You moved the chains 4 times. You got 4 first downs. You ate up 6 minutes on the clock. Now you come down here and you get inside the red zone and you can't get a first down or you can't score a touchdown. Or you turn the ball over. don't understand that. And that's what I'm trying to figure it out with Purdue, because I saw the same thing against Wisconsin. They could move the ball, and that's why I said it was my lock of the week. I thought they could move the ball against the Rutgers defense, and they did. But they couldn't score. They couldn't even kick field goals, Kevin. I mean, what is up with that? Do you have any words of wisdom there? Are your thoughts too on the red zone ineffectiveness of a lot of teams? Like I said, teams can move the ball, and again, I'm getting more general, not just Purdue. Teams that can move the ball in between the 20s, but then they get in the red zone and it's like they choke, they freeze, they tighten up. And these coaches, it's like all of a sudden that Sharpie that they have where they're Xing and O'ing their little dry erase sheet and all their plays, it's like they crumple it up, throw it in the garbage, and go off the cuff. I don't understand. Don't you work on that? Teams say, yeah, we're going to work on a red zone offense. We're going to work on a red zone offense. Well, I never see it with these teams. And it's not just Purdue. It's a lot of really good offensive teams that can move the ball, but they can't finish the deal. And it's pretty bad. That's what happened against Rutgers. So what are your thoughts here on, I guess, teams that move the ball and get to the red zone? What are your thoughts?
I don't have a definite answer. I guess one thing I wanted to mention, and this is something I've never thought about before, but I wonder if teams like Purdue going forward, like teams who have struggled in the red zone before, over the course of a year, say once they're at midfield, at the opponent's 40, 35-yard line, if they actually try and go for touchdowns and try and go for home runs because they know that they're ineffective. They know that their kicker can't necessarily be counted on to kick a 40-yarder, let alone a 50-yarder. So I wonder if teams like that kind of adjust and understand that their offense struggles in the red zone over the course of a year, and they try and go for home runs. And I wonder if that ends up hurting teams. It's something I've never thought of before, but just going to your red zone point, it gets congested. And for teams like, say, Ohio State, I guess you've got all these premier athletes all over the place, and if you're a defense, you're scared of them burning you over the top. You're scared of them stretching the field, not necessarily because of JT Barrett's arm, but just because of the speed that's on the outside. You don't want to get beat deep necessarily. You want to keep most things in front of you. You want to be able to say, hey, we're going to stack 8 in the box and not let Ohio State run, but we're not going to give you free deep balls. We're just going to give you one-on-one coverage, and JT Barrett has to make a good throw. But so when the field's condensed, you can only do so much as an offense. Ohio State's speed only matters so much when you're in the red zone, so to say. And I have no idea what Ohio State's efficiency is in the red zone this year. I couldn't tell you that. But just in general, it's harder to score when you are crunched in. And a lot of people, wonder what their team does when it's first and goal from the 5 and they have to settle for field goals all the time, or they don't score, or it's first and goal on the 2 and you run it 3 straight plays and you get stopped and there's no offensive creativity. We talked about that a week ago on the show. It's just harder when the field is crunched. The playbook is limited. It's not something you think about normally if you're an offense. If you're a quarterback, if you're an offensive coordinator, like you said, teams bring it up when talking to the media, like, hey, we're working on our red zone offense. It's obviously important, which it is, but it seems like teams, play callers, quarterbacks think, at least in my mind, I think that they believe when mentally preparing, during a week, you think about using the whole field. You think about all these different plays you can use, how you can exploit mismatches defensively. You don't think about what happens if it is 3rd and goal from the 6. What happens if it is 3rd and 6 from the 10-yard line? What do we do? How can we use our speed to our advantage? How can we use certain mismatches to our advantage that we know we have? I think those little details kind of get lost in the overall game plan. I think it's a general problem in the sport of football. Even though certain teams are obviously better in the red zone than others, I think in general, almost everyone wants their red zone offense to be better. I think that's probably a general consensus, not just in college football, the NFL, any level, because they know that the playbook is tighter. or the playbook has shrunk because the field is tighter and you can only run a certain amount of plays. And again, just thinking about the game, it's not something you think about normally. When you talk about a game plan and how we're going to attack Penn State's defense, you don't think about attacking Penn State's defense when it's 3rd and goal from the 5-yard line. So I just think it gets thought of a lot less, and I think that the playbook shrinks, the field shrinks. I just think it's harder in general to score in the red zone. That's my overall take on it, I guess.
The one thing, Kevin, that I always wondered is, especially in college when the ball's on the far hash, why not run a reverse? I mean, play act are just fake run because everybody's usually biting to the run, especially if it's inside the 5. Why not run a reverse? I mean, I think it would work. But you never see a reverse inside the 5-yard line.
No.
So think about it. Think about even in the pros, when you line up and you line up in that power formation, and if you put 2 receivers to the right, and I'm going to say you're on that far hash, I mean, think about the things that could happen because they're going to bite. The defense is going to bite and collapse because they're like, oh, this team's going to run it. Why not have or even a fake and a pitch reverse? I mean, get creative. Come on, guys. Let's score some touchdowns in the red zone. But anyway, I was wrong. My lock of the week, Purdue lost straight up. That was even worse. But let's move forward. A lot of games in the Big Ten. A lot of interesting things to talk about. Youngster, move right along.
Yeah. I guess the next one I'll go to is Minnesota beating Illinois. Talking about these other bottom dwellers, I suppose, quote unquote. Illinois lost, or Minnesota won, 24-17, I should say. Minnesota ran for 333 yards. And the one thing I wanted to bring up, outside of your curse finally being gone from this Minnesota team, Troy, the one thing I wanted to bring up in particular was obviously Illinois' rush defense was not good in this one, but they were switching their quarterback play from Jeff George Jr., who attempted 23 passes, to their backup, Cam Thomas, who's a freshman. I believe he had 2 pass attempts in the game. I'm checking right now to make sure. But they were going with, or 4 pass attempts, I guess. So they were barely platooning these 2. And Lovie Smith just wanted to give the offense a jolt, I guess. It's weird to say because Jeff George Jr. completed 18 of 23 passes. He was doing dink and dunk stuff, but he wasn't losing the game, and he was completing the majority of his passes. But he brought in this freshman, Cam Thomas, in the fourth quarter for a play, and he threw basically what was the game-clinching interception. He was 2 for 4, 33 yards, 1 pick. That's the stat line. So they kind of, you could say, lost the game right there. I mean, this team was able to move the ball on Minnesota. Jeff George Jr., again, 18 of 23. You can't ask for much more from an accuracy standpoint. But this Cam Thomas guy, he did run the ball 10 times. He was Illinois' leading rusher in this game. So you take away Mike Epstein, their leading rusher over the season, who's also a freshman. You take him away with an injury, season-ending injury. We talked about that last week. You import Cam Thomas as quarterback, this athlete, and he throws a pick in the fourth quarter. He obviously has legs. He can obviously run the football. But maybe try not to throw the ball with Cam Thomas in the fourth quarter, who's a freshman, in a very close game, and he throws a game-clinching interception on this one. I was very surprised to see that, to see how well Jeff George Jr. was playing and to see a freshman come in and throw that game-clinching interception. That surprised me.
Yeah, if I'm Minnesota, I know as poorly as they've played, they got a win, so you can never apologize for a win. But, again, I don't think they played great. I mean, Illinois is not a good team right now, very young. You would think that a team like Minnesota, and you have them in that middle tier, a team that can go out and play good football, they let Illinois hang around. This, to me, if I'm a coach, yeah, I got to win. But I got to look at who the win was against and how we got the win. And I don't mean to be critical, but you have to realize you played Illinois. You're supposed to win this game. but you didn't do it in convincing fashion. So where are the problems? And I look at this Minnesota team, Kevin, and, again, am I a jinx? I don't know. They're going to be gritty. They're going to do some things, but, again, not impressive. I know Illinois is one of those teams that's just going to go out and play. They, like you said, they probably made a fatal error. I like Lovie Smith. I think he's the right guy for that job. But what was he doing? You got a quarterback and you're still in the game. Why are you making that move? Was it because of the athletic ability and have him run, to be able to escape pressure? Fine. But then, like you said, you're putting him in critical passing situations. And how much has this kid played before now? And like you said, that was the game, an interception. But I wasn't impressed with Minnesota getting a win here. They got a win. Again, you don't apologize for a win. A win's a win. But Minnesota is another one of those teams that is not playing good football right now. And it's, it could be a long rest of the season for Minnesota if they don't figure some things out. They played very poorly, in my mind, against Illinois.
Yeah, they were able to run the ball a ton. They're 4-3, so they could possibly make a bowl game soon, Troy. But yeah, they're not better than most teams in the Big Ten. That's for sure. I'll move on to Michigan State and Indiana. You were wrong on this upset as well, not to bring up your wrongdoings, but you picked Indiana.
I've been wrong on a lot of things lately. I'm going to blame it on old age.
Okay.
Blame it on old age, and maybe we should put a disclaimer on the show. Whatever I say, do the opposite.
That's something you've mentioned in the past. I guess go with our locks of the week that we decide as a duo. We're perfect on those. Not to say that there's been too many of those because there's only been one as of 2 weeks ago. But we'll see if there are any big go big or go home locks of the week as a dynamic duo that we are, Troy. Together this week. We'll have that going forward.
See, I'm going to blame it on you. You didn't agree with anything. Kind of like you threw me out on the island without an inner tube or a safety line or anything like that. You just threw me out in the ocean onto the island by myself. So I'm going to blame you for that.
Okay, fair enough. My fault. I'll say this, that Michigan State was trailing going into the fourth quarter. They were down 6-3. It was obviously a defensive battle going on there. But Michigan State, in the end, scores 14 points in the fourth quarter, and that's obviously when it matters most. So, in general, Michigan State got it done. They were at home. They should have beaten Indiana. This was an upset pick by Troy. Indiana wasn't supposed to win this game, according to Vegas. According to most, going on the road, if it was at Indiana, I'm sure it would have been a bit different. But Michigan State hung in there till the end and eventually just ended up finally finding the end zone in the fourth quarter. They scored the game's only 2 touchdowns in this game. So Michigan State getting it done, 6-1 overall. After, I believe, they play Northwestern. I can check right now. Yeah, they play Northwestern this Saturday on the road. That should be interesting. But after that, then they play Ohio State and Penn State back-to-back. So we'll really, truly be able to see what Michigan State is all about in a couple weeks. There anything you wanted to add with that game, Troy?
Well, it just that big win over Michigan that we thought was pretty big for Michigan State isn't looking so big right now the way Michigan's playing.
Yeah.
And here's the thing with Michigan State. It's not pretty. Yeah, I mentioned Minnesota, not looking well while they're beating Indiana. Well, Michigan State hasn't looked great in their wins either, but they're figuring out a way to win. So there is a little bit of a difference there. They're not playing poorly, and it doesn't look great. It's almost like they play to their level of competition, but they're getting it done. And then they're like flipping on a light switch at the end, like they're a second-half team. And they hung on against Michigan. So it's like they have inconsistencies within the game itself, but they're finding ways at the final whistle to win, which is different than Minnesota, who's just not playing good football. Michigan State plays really good football at certain times during a game, then they play really poorly at times during a game. And it just surprises me that this Indiana offense, you had mentioned it against Ohio State. It's like this Indiana offense, Kevin, has been on a decline ever since week 1. And it's an offense that we thought would actually be, pretty proficient and be able to give some teams some fits, but it really hasn't. They haven't been able to score a ton of points. They haven't been able to utilize the skill that they have. And it's actually, I looked at it going, okay, is Michigan State's defense really that good, or is there something going on here? It is Indiana. Don't get me wrong, they're not a powerhouse team, but you had mentioned it. They've got some skill players. They've got decent quarterback play, and it's just, to me, I wonder why they can't score more points. Michigan State, they're a good team. 6-1 team, ranked team. Hey, they're winning. They're getting it done. But like you said, I even think they got a test against Northwestern this week, even though Northwestern's not lighting up the scoreboard and not turning people's heads with their play. They have to travel to Northwestern, if I'm correct. They play. Yep. Michigan State plays on the road, correct? So yep. Again, it's a road game in the Big Ten. Those are tough. And so for Northwestern, the way their season has went, to play an undefeated Michigan State team, Northwestern will be ready to play. And Michigan State better prepare. And those inconsistencies, the competition, this is a Northwestern team, Kevin, that I thought, and I think you did too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was going to be not at the top of the division, but one of those schools near the top of your middle tier that could maybe pull an upset or two during the year. And I'm not saying a win over Michigan State would be an upset, but the way when you look at the records, it would be now. But Northwestern has some good pieces in place, and if Michigan State doesn't come ready to play 60 minutes, Northwestern could capitalize on those little inconsistencies throughout the game. Is it going to be a 5-minute stretch? Is it going to be a 12-minute stretch? Those little stretches within that game, and we'll preview the games, but those little stretches, Kevin, could be all Northwestern needs to take control of that game and hand Michigan State their first conference loss.
Yeah, I think that could very well happen. Like you said, we'll preview the games. I have no idea, though, why Indiana doesn't go with Richard Lagow at quarterback, who showed against Ohio State that he can move the ball, he can distribute the ball, his wide receivers can make plays. I have no idea why they go with Peyton Ramsey at quarterback. He is a better runner than Richard Lagow, no question about it, but Lagow's the better thrower. I think he's proven that. I know he had, I think it was a down second game or third game of the year, or maybe it was both, and that's what really instituted the complete quarterback change. I know they had kind of a platoon going there for a long time, but now Ramsey took every snap as a quarterback. As far as I'm concerned in this game, I'm not seeing Lagow anywhere on the box score. So I don't get it. I don't get why you're having your second best throwing quarterback throw the ball 34 times against Michigan State. I don't get it. He ran it 15 times. That's obviously something he brings to the table, but you can throw it. This is, to me, still the best group of wide receivers in the Big Ten is in Indiana. Seriously. I believe that. I said that a week ago. I'm still sticking with it, but you got to get them the ball. Simi Cobbs Jr., fantastic wide receiver. I'm sure he'll be in the NFL. 7 catches, only 53 yards. So there's another guy, Luke Timian, 7 catches, 33 yards. This Ramsey guy, to me, is not a great thrower. 22 of 34, he can complete passes, but per attempt, not even 5 yards an attempt. I mean that's crap.
What's he throwing? Bubble screens the whole day?
Pretty much, apparently, because there's nothing going past 15 yards. I almost guarantee that. So I don't get it. I don't know what Indiana's doing offensively. They have the talent to do it, and defensively, I know they have the talent to stop some teams. Like Michigan State, only giving up 3 points in the first 3 quarters. I know Indiana's got some talent defensively. I thought they were going to be kind of the same level as Northwestern this year. except Northwestern likes to run the ball more. I thought Indiana would throw the ball more. But defensively, I think both those teams are solid. And I thought they were potential top 25 teams once in a while. I don't think they were going to stay in the top 25 all year long, but I thought they would make an appearance, every so often throughout the year, and that's obviously not happened with either of those teams. Indiana now 3-4. I guess the next Big Ten game I wanted to go to was Wisconsin and Maryland, and Wisconsin won this game 38-13. To me, I mean, it's just we talked about Wisconsin earlier, where if you're able to get a lead and you can run Jonathan Taylor, he only had 22 carries in this game, which I guess surprised me. I would have expected
down game for him. You have to throw his stat line out there, Kevin. This was way below what he is used to doing. But again, they had the game in control too.
Yeah, 22 carries, 126 yards, 1 touchdown. It's obviously a productive day, but it's not a day you look back on and say this is why he should have won the Heisman day. But Wisconsin wins by 25 points. I'm sure that's what Taylor truly cares about at this point in his freshman season at Wisconsin. They're still piling up the wins. They can beat all of these middle-tier teams with their great defense, with their great running game, with their efficient passing attack when they are ahead. There's no reason to think that Wisconsin is going to lose a game this year going up until the Big Ten championship game. I mentioned that a week ago. It's something we thought was possible before the year even started. But going forward, again, I mean, at Illinois this next week, and then they go at Indiana, then they play Iowa at home, then they play Michigan at home, then they go at Minnesota. There's no one scaring you there. And you get Iowa at home, you get Michigan at home. So those are probably your 2 best teams left on the regular season schedule. So to me, I see 12-0 going into the Big Ten.
Crazy things happen, youngster, in the Big Ten. Wisconsin travels to Illinois, right?
Yes, they do. Are you calling an upset then?
I'm not calling an upset, but it's a border war. It's a border war, and crazy things happen. Wisconsin should be able to manhandle Illinois. We'll preview the game in a little bit. I want to talk about the game itself. Like I mentioned, this defense, to me, keeps getting better every week, Kevin. I had some question marks at the beginning of the year defensively. How are they going to stack up? Now, again, they haven't played a juggernaut offense, but it's like they have an extended training camp, which is called 12 games before the Big Ten championship, to get all of these things in place. And I don't know if you watched any of the game, any snaps, and I don't know if any of my listeners have, or our listeners, I shouldn't say my listeners, but I guess I'm talking about Badger fans. But when you watch this team, Kevin, defensively, they just fly to the ball. They're an optimistic defense. And it's like, I don't know how to explain it via the radio, other than you get guys that, I don't want to say are playing free willy. There's a purpose to what they're doing, but it's like they don't play scared. Like if you and I were playing on the defense and I'm going hard to the play, I don't even need to think about what happens if I get beat, because I know you're behind me to take care of it. And that's the way Wisconsin plays. So their only concern is making plays. They're not worried about, if I miss this tackle, I'm in trouble. Because I see that a lot, especially in college. Like, guys are going out there being like, I'm the guy. I've got to make this play. Otherwise, we're in trouble. And I don't know if this makes sense to anybody listening or even you, but they play very loose and very confident that they're going to make plays, and they try to make plays knowing that if they don't make the play, somebody's there to mop it up. And that's actually a staple of a Paul Chryst defense. That's what he likes to do. And That's what's happening right now. My only concern is it's only the middle of the season. I don't want them to be playing so great on defense right now. Because, again, in this game, another defensive turnover for a touchdown. And I think part of it is they just play so confident on defense. And, again, it is against middle-of-the-pack teams. But, hey, you got to compliment them. They didn't let Maryland do anything in this game, and they just shut them down. That's what they were supposed to do. We say it all the time on this show, Kevin. Teams need to do what they're supposed to do, and that's what Wisconsin did against Maryland. It was actually, in my mind, a boring game. A boring game as a Badger fan because they're in control. It was, I don't want to say it wasn't fun to watch, but it's like, oh, yeah, Wisconsin's being Wisconsin right now. This is what I expected them to do against the Maryland team. So I have to give my hats off to that. And it's, like I said, it's exciting as a fan because it's like, wow, Wisconsin's number 5. Wisconsin's right on the brink of the playoff. And if they keep doing what they're supposed to do, if one of those top 4 teams would stumble, that would slide them up there. But then that other part of me is like, do I really want them there? Because I don't think they deserve to be there. I don't think they're one of the best 4. But maybe they do deserve a chance. So people will get on me about that. But that's just me inside. That's all I had to throw out there about Wisconsin. Still not, I guess my last comment, I guess that's not it. Sorry. Got to blame the old man's memory for that. Because I wanted to mention quarterback play. You mentioned this, and I like the way you said it. The efficient quarterback play when they have the lead. And I'm thinking that stemmed from my comments all the last 3-4 weeks that I'm waiting for him to actually have to prove it. Because when you're playing with a lead and you're playing with a running back with the threat of play action, he can do whatever he wants. And he is an effective quarterback. And I'm not taking that away from him. But he's got so many other pieces that are contributing to that effectiveness. So what happens when a team shuts down Taylor and he's averaging 3 yards a carry? What happens when Taylor only can get 14 carries because you're down by 17? You don't have play action at that point. What happens when the defense doesn't get off the field on 3rd down and now you've got a 90-yard drive? I want to see these things before I can say they deserve to be in the playoff. Maybe that is wrong of me. Maybe that's not the right thought, and maybe I should just be happy that they're number 5. But there's a lot of things that this Badger team needs to prove to me that they haven't been able to do against the middle-of-the-pack teams. I promise. That's it on Wisconsin because I could keep going on and on.
Well, I'll piggyback off it because you brought up a lot of stuff. I'll say this, that one of my friends and I were talking about Wisconsin, and he's like, well, I mentioned to him Wisconsin's number 5 in the country, and he's someone who does not follow college football really whatsoever. He's a Wisconsin fan, but he doesn't really follow the Badgers' college football in general. And he's like, yeah, they're undefeated. Yeah, they're number 5 in the country, but I still don't even think they're one of the top 5 teams in the country. And he knows that. That's his belief. I mean, and he doesn't follow college football much at all. But he understands, what Alabama has, what Ohio State has, what Penn State even now has, what these top teams have. Georgia playing at an elite level. TCU has not proven anything otherwise. Clemson athletically much better than Wisconsin. And that's not to take away from Wisconsin. Clemson's athletically better than just about everyone else in the country. But that's just the reality of it. And so I think that you're not crazy to just, shut up, be happy, you're the number 5 team in the country, just let them go undefeated and they deserve a shot to play in the college football playoff. That's not it. I don't think that's correct. I think you're of the right mindset that this team should prove it against someone good, and they should prove it against competition that doesn't allow Jonathan Taylor to run for 200 yards left and right. They should prove it against a team that can move the ball up and down the field, not a 4-string quarterback from Maryland, not whoever Wisconsin has played this year, basically. Purdue, we mentioned their offense, but still obviously can struggle at times. Nebraska can struggle at times. Northwestern, Wisconsin still gave up 24 points. For the majority of that game, they held them down when they needed to, but Northwestern scored 24 points. BYU has struggled. FAU is FAU. Utah State is Utah State. So, and going forward, I mean, you don't have elite offenses going against this Wisconsin team. So it might be until December until we know how good Wisconsin is, until they have to prove it. But I don't think you're of the wrong mindset there. I guess there was one other point I wanted to make, but the other point I wanted to make finally before moving on was, Wisconsin's getting the job done, and they should get applauded for it because number 2 Clemson last week couldn't get the job done. They should have, but they didn't. Number 5 Washington should have got the job done. They didn't. Number 8 Washington State should have got the job done. They didn't. Number 10 Auburn should have got the job done. They didn't. So it has to be applauded. You have to say something about Wisconsin week after week, winning the games they want to, running on everyone, playing defense successfully against everyone, because teams like Clemson haven't. Teams like Washington State, Auburn didn't. All of them didn't just a week ago, let alone the whole season. You can pinpoint almost everyone in the country because basically no one's undefeated outside of UCF, USF, and a few, powers. But that's it. Everyone else was lost. So, yes, give Wisconsin the credit they deserve, but like we've said, they have to prove it against an elite team. Otherwise, it's just, at this point, yes, they have a good defense. Yes, they have a good running game. But what happens if certain things get taken away? That's what we'll find out probably in December, in my opinion. But moving on to, I think, we've got Iowa, Northwestern, Iowa. We haven't talked about Northwestern beat Iowa 17-10. And I'm going to parlay this into another topic before we talk about the Week 9 stuff, and it's already been an hour in the show. It seems like we always go an hour before we preview the next week's games, regardless of how much we talk about the top 25, apparently. But Northwestern beats Iowa 17-10 in overtime. My only note for this was
we were just meant to have a morning radio show or a nighttime radio show or a drive time radio show that lasts 3 hours. So, yes, I'm plugging the youngster and old man. Talking sports with the youngster and old man, whether it be go big or go home. I think the reason that happens, Kevin, is because we were destined to have a 3-hour show on radio. So those listening in, get us to your local radio station. Kevin and I will work for ramen noodles. Ramen noodles will even sleep in an RV. We just want ramen noodles to eat and a place to call home for our radio show. I had to throw it out there, youngster. I had to. We're good. We're good. We keep talking. We could go on and on. Honestly, an hour and a half show for you and I, that's like cutting a lot of good stuff out yet. You and I could talk for like 7 hours about the Big Ten. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah. No question about it from my end. But I guess with this Northwestern Iowa game, and I guess I'll somewhat lead it into what I wanted to talk about, but this is a middle-of-the-pack Northwestern team, kind of toward the top of the middle, I guess. I guess another top of the middle, I guess I'll keep saying that, program in Iowa. And Northwestern wins at home in overtime. It's a close game. This doesn't surprise me whatsoever. This doesn't shock me. I don't have notes on this other than the defense has stepped up for both teams. And Northwestern obviously got the touchdown they needed to in overtime. But I guess the thing I wanted to bring out of this, and I said I had worked a Atlanta 10 shift earlier today, and it was interesting, something caught my eye. And there was this, I guess Atlanta 10 does this question of the day thing with their Big Ten reporter, and he takes a question from Twitter every single day and answers it in kind of a long form article. And the question, and I'm curious on your kind of response to this, Troy, because I have mine, but it deals with this game too. But the question was, so as Iowa fans, we should expect a great year every now and then, but not consistently. It seems like it's an, oh, well, we're just Iowa mindset. So basically saying, we're just another Big Ten middle-of-the-road team. We shouldn't expect greatness. We should be happy with 7-5, 8-4, with the occasional 11-win, 12-win season here and there. But we're just Iowa, so we should be happy with that. This game at Northwestern, you lose games like this once in a while. You win the occasional big game, but you'll lose games like this once in a while. You'll beat up on the bottom dwellers for the most part. You'll lose to the top teams for the most part. But I think Iowa's just there, and they're in the middle of the Big Ten, and they're, a notch above teams like Purdue and Indiana for sure on a general, consistent annual basis. But yeah, I do think I am of that mindset. I think that is the correct mindset, that we're 7-5, and the reporter, the beat reporter for Atlanta 10 mentioned, in Iowa's 39-year history, they've averaged barely over 7 wins a year. Whether it's Ferentz, whether it's whoever else, they average over 7 wins a year, and Ferentz has done the same. Even though it seems like Ferentz has won more games than 7 a year, that's his average, is a little over 7 a year. And so these middle-of-the-road programs like this, and maybe I'm wrong, I guess I'm curious on your take, Troy, but all of these middle-of-the-pack programs, Michigan State, Indiana, Iowa, Northwestern, Purdue, just all of these, Maryland's, even Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's certainly been consistently in the top 25 in recent memory for me. So they're definitely a notch above these middle-of-the-pack teams. But your thought on these middle-of-the-pack teams, just kind of it being a coin flip. And like you mentioned, on any given Saturday, Indiana can lose to Michigan State, Indiana can beat Penn State, and Maryland can beat Michigan State, or they could lose to Michigan State, and Iowa can lose to Northwestern, or Iowa could beat Northwestern. It's just you're a middle-of-the-pack program. Certain years you'll have your years, but you aren't Ohio State. You aren't Michigan. Certain years, once in a while, yeah, you'll be better than one of those teams. But on a consistent basis, you're just Iowa. And maybe that's a bad thing, but I think it's honestly just a reality.
It is a bad thing, Kevin, but it's reality. So I'm not saying anything bad about you. It's a bad thing for Iowa fans. They've given in to the same mindset that the University of Pittsburgh has. You're going to live with 7-5, 8-4. Why? Why should that be acceptable? The way that you change it, Kevin, it's a very bad thing. Wisconsin was that way for a very, very long time. You got to remember, I'm an old guy. I remember the old days of watching Wisconsin Badger football and turning it off after the first quarter because it was bad. It was horrid. The way you get out of the middle of the pack, Kevin, and I'll bring it up, it's like a 2017 season theme with the old man. Iowa needs to get back to an identity. Do you remember when Iowa was good? Maybe you're too young to remember when Iowa was good. They had a very good, solid defense, and they did what Wisconsin did. That was Iowa's identity. What is Iowa's identity right now? I have no idea. Can they even play defense? Apparently against Northwestern they did. Are they going to throw the ball? Can they run the ball? What are they going to do? When Kirk Ferentz had a chance to go to the NFL, he should have went. I think he's done a terrible job the last 3 years. Terrible job recruiting, terrible job coaching this team. He is coaching to mediocre play. That's what it is. And so if that's what you want, then fine. Keep him and live with 7-5 and don't bitch about it. Sorry for saying that word. It's a podcast. We're not on the air. But I can't stand when fans give into it. It shouldn't be acceptable, Kevin. But it's reality that that's all Iowa is right now, a 7-5, 8-4 team. They have no identity. What are they trying to do? And that goes to the coach. Yep. We know what Paul Chryst is going to do, and I hate to keep bringing up Wisconsin. I'm not saying they're the save-all of every program, but look at Wisconsin and what they try to do every game, and then look at how he goes to recruit. He doesn't get a 4-star quarterback. He doesn't get a 5-star receiver. He doesn't even go in and get a 4-star lineman, but he gets big, beefy guys that he can coach to have a burly line, and then he goes to steal some kids in the backfield that nobody else knows about, but can run behind that line and be Heisman hopefuls. That is an identity of Wisconsin. And he goes out and gets good defensive players that are going to play blue-collar football and knock the snot out of you. What does Iowa do? What is their identity? It's what you said. Maybe we'll win a game. We could lose, though, to a bottom dweller because we don't know what the heck we're doing. I could get worked up on this, Kevin, because I'm not going to use the word hate. I get irritated when fans start making excuses for their program because there's an easy way to solve it. Get a coach that wants to put an identity in place and that knows how to do it and is going to go recruit to have that identity. Now, is that going to work all the time? No. It is not going to work. It's not going to work at Wisconsin to win a national championship either because we don't know about the quarterback play. But we do know that they're going to run the ball, and we do know they're going to play good defense. How will it stack up against the best in the country? We don't know, but they're going to take care of business all the way along the way. Iowa, they're hoping. You're hoping. And that's why I said Kirk Ferentz is not doing a good job in Iowa. He should have went to the NFL when his name came up. But no, his ego got in the way. He thought he was going to build a great program at Iowa, and he's recruited like crap. That's all I got.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this. You brought up, how Paul Chryst doesn't even have to find a 5-star, 4-star running back to run behind a great offensive line. Jonathan Taylor, here's coming out of high school, his scholarship offers he's received. It was Wisconsin, obviously. You had Rutgers, Albany, Army, Boston College, Temple, and then finally there's Virginia Tech on there. That's it. That's who he got scholarship offers from, at least according to 247 Sports, 24/7 Sports. So,
what was his ranking? A 3-star?
Yeah,
does
it was
it
a 3-star recruit. Yep. Yeah,
that's
a 3-star
because,
recruit.
And I'll throw this out there again and to repeat myself, because Paul Chryst knows if he can build a big, burly offensive line, he doesn't need to even get in the running for a 5-star running back. He doesn't need to. He's going to go find a kid that fits his system. It's so simple, and that's why I get worked up, Kevin. It's so simple. Get your plan in place and get the guys that are going to execute it. It's that simple. I was a college coach. That's how I recruited. Were there guys that I would have loved to have? Yeah. And then I went to tournaments, and everybody's going to watch this great forward play. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't need that kid. He's an individual player. He's not going to fit my system. Plus, I'm not even going to be in the running, so why waste my time? I'm going to go over here in the corner of the complex and watch this little kid over here that's playing 90 minutes with blood, sweat, tears on his back because I need a blue-collar guy that's going to play in the middle of my defense. That's what I did. I needed that kind of guy. And that's what Paul Chryst does. That's what every coach should do. It's so simple. You got me worked up on the show again. I didn't even want to get worked up, youngster.
I apologize. That's what I wanted to bring up from Iowa, and that's kind of the response I was not necessarily hoping for, but kind of anticipating. It's like you need to get a coach, and he needs to be a good one. That's what matters in college football. That's how Michigan is getting 5-star after 5-star. That's how they were preseason top 10. That's how Jim Harbaugh completely turned them around from what they've been over the last 5-7 or so years. You just need a really good coach. And in college football, if you've got a great coach and he knows his system and how he recruits and how to win with those recruits, even Urban Meyer doesn't get the top 5-star pocket passing quarterback. He just gets a solid 4-star quarterback who can throw it but is also really good with his legs. That's what Urban Meyer looks for. Tim Tebow is not this 5-star perfect pocket passing quarterback. Jim Harbaugh looks for a really good quarterback. He hasn't obviously hit yet, and maybe he has, and that guy just hasn't played. I know Brandon Peters is on the bench as a freshman. But I think in general, you need coaches who know their identity and coach to it and recruit to it. And it just takes one really good coach to truly take your program to a different level. And Barry Alvarez did that with Wisconsin. And I think that even Urban Meyer has done that with Ohio State. Ohio State was not doing too well right before Urban Meyer. And a lot of people like Jim Tressel, but then they realized, hey, this guy's actually not that fantastic of a coach.
I'm going to interrupt you, Kevin, because you brought this up. I asked you the question about 4 weeks ago about Urban Meyer and why he can't get a 4 or 5-star recruit quarterback. You said to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, he doesn't need to. That's not what he's looking for. He's looking for guys that fit his system. I believe that was your response when I asked you that question. You can elaborate on that if you want.
Yeah. It's true. I stand by it. I don't think he goes after the Andrew Lucks, the Sam Darnolds, the Trevor Lawrences, I don't know if he wanted Justin Fields or not, the number one dual threat quarterback. I don't know if he goes for those guys. I think if you walk into a solid 4-star dual threat quarterback's home and you say, hey, I'm Urban Meyer, I'm Ohio State, I want you to be our next quarterback, I think that's as good as it's going to get. If you're a 4-star quarterback, even if you're a 5-star quarterback, I don't know how you say no to Ohio State. I don't know if you're a 5-star prospect, how you say no to Alabama, to Clemson at this point, Florida State, those programs that just recruit and send you to the NFL. It's hard to say no. And so if you're a 4-star, if you're the 3rd best dual threat quarterback, and you go to Ohio State and you've got all these playmakers around you with elite level defense, how can you not succeed? You're going to the next level, even if you are a Braxton Miller, Terrell Pryor, Troy Smith type guy who can't necessarily throw the ball perfectly. You'll still find your spot on an NFL roster because you're the quarterback of Ohio State. So I think it's very intelligent of Urban Meyer and how he recruits quarterbacks, and he knows those quarterbacks are going to work for his system because of exactly how he tailors the system to the quarterback and just the skill players and speed that he has on the outside. But he does a phenomenal job as a coach. He's done it everywhere he's gone, not even just Florida and Ohio State, but places like Bowling Green, places like Utah. You don't take Bowling Green to 12-1. You don't take Utah to 13-0 unless you know what the hell you're doing. So, again, you can excuse my language for using hell, but you need a really good coach. That's ultimately what it takes. There's not a ton of them out there, obviously, but find a coach who knows his system, knows what he's doing. Even I, who cover Wisconsin freelance high school sports, there was this coach that a girls basketball team picked up, and they immediately, his first year, completely changed the program because he has his identity and he sticks to it and he coaches to the T to it. And for whatever reason, he's no longer the coach as of this year. Will be their first year without him. I really want to know why. I'll do a story on that eventually. But if you've got a coach who's a good one, who's been around the game for a while and knows his system and coaches and recruits to it, that's all you need. It doesn't take this amazing guy to get 5-star after 5-star. You can ask Wisconsin about that. But the last game that we have not, I guess, recapped, although I don't know how much more we're going to talk about it, is Penn State beating Michigan 42-13. This was Penn State getting to play what was seen as a good team and elite defense, and they thrashed them. There's not a ton for me to say about this because it just was a beatdown, and they were up 14-0 in the first quarter. They led this entire game. You score 42 points on Michigan's defense. Penn State's for real. They're playing Ohio State this week. There's not a ton, I guess, for me to necessarily elaborate on. Obviously, you can go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, Barkley's going to win the Heisman. There's my recap. I mean, I said it earlier in the show. Michigan didn't show up, and Michigan's been playing very poorly. I'm surprised they got votes. If I'm a voter, how can I put Michigan in as one of the best 25 teams in the country right now? I understand it was Penn State, but Penn State walloped you, literally walloped you from opening kickoff to the final whistle. You didn't even have a chance in this game. Penn State treated you like a whooping boy, and whooping boys are not in the top 25. And I know Michigan's not, but somebody put them in there because they got votes. So it must have been a writer from Michigan that put them at 24 or 25. They don't deserve to even get votes. That's how poorly they played. I think, and I'm not saying that Jim Harbaugh is doing a bad job, but we talked about the offensive inefficiency. We talked about efficiency of Wisconsin before, but it's almost like now Michigan has the same problem that Wisconsin has. Their quarterback needs to be a front runner. He needs to play with a lead. And that defense is getting so beat up because the offense can't do anything that this elite, I'm air quoting, elite defense that we all thought is just getting beat up. They're on the field too much. I don't know if you have time of possession, Kevin, and I don't know if you have time to pull it up. We really probably want to get moving along here to recap the next games or preview the next games real quick. But this defense is on the field way too long. And then the offense doesn't go out and do anything, and then they got to turn around and be right back on the field. How demoralizing is that as a defense when you give up a long scoring drive, your offense gets the ball back, and they can't do anything with it. They can't sustain a drive, and you got to go right back on the field. I don't care if you're all five-star athletes. That's demoralizing. Like, come on. Give us a break. They had no breaks against Penn State, and Penn State jammed it down their throats. Michigan is not a good football team right now. They still got a good defense. The problem is they're not good on the other side of the ball. They're actually, in my mind right now, they can run, but what if you stop the run? So I'll put it this way, and I'll throw Wisconsin in the mix. Wisconsin fans listening in, this is what you might get from Wisconsin when they play good teams, because they're playing from behind and they don't have the offensive firepower to do it. And that's what the problem is with Michigan. They're in a dogfight, and they don't have the quarterback play, Kevin, to get them over the hump. And they're hoping and relying on their defense, which is just not getting any help from the offense. That's all I got about that game. You can add what you want, and then we can move on.
Yeah, surprisingly, Michigan actually won the time of possession battle. It was by a couple minutes, but they had more time of possession than Penn State, but Penn State had 500 yards total offense. So it wasn't as though Michigan was controlling the clock from that perspective, that they were stopping Penn State and having the ball for oodles amounts of time. Penn State was just scoring and scoring and scoring, and so Michigan is playing from this big deficit, and you want to throw the ball when you're down by 14, 21, 28 points. So Michigan couldn't do what they wanted to do. It wasn't necessarily a time of possession issue, I don't think, but Penn State ran for over 200 yards, over 500 yards of offense. Michigan only got to run it for 103 yards. If you're Michigan, you want to run it for 200. You don't want 40 attempts to end in 100 yards. You want 40 attempts to end in 200. That's what Wisconsin does. That's what Penn State just did to you. Michigan had no control in this game whatsoever, and they played from behind. And like you said, Troy, they don't have the quarterback play to get themselves out of it. Wilton Speight is out, their starter at quarterback, but even before Speight was hurt, people wanted John O'Korn anyway to be their quarterback, and that hasn't made a difference. He's proven that week after week after week now. The last 3 weeks, Michigan has played poorly. Even in an overtime win over Indiana, they didn't play well. So that's all I have to add there. And I can, I guess, move on to week 9, and we will see if there are any go big or go home locks of the week. I think it's something we can tweet out when they happen. It'll be interesting to see if anyone cares about them. I know that hundreds and hundreds of people listen to the show every single week, so people do listen. It's just a matter of whether they take our locks of the week seriously or not. I will leave Penn State, Ohio State till the end, and I will start with Wisconsin, who we have talked a lot about. Wisconsin at Illinois, and this could be interesting because, Troy, you said this could be, I guess, for lack there of a better word, an interesting game. Because it's a border war, it's at Illinois, Wisconsin's on the road. Noon start, Wisconsin's favored by 27 points. I don't know if that's incorrect because I think Wisconsin probably should win by 4 touchdowns. It's just hard to think of Wisconsin giving 27 points off the get-go to any team on the road in the Big Ten.
I'll tell you, I didn't think they were going to cover against Maryland, and they just did because it was 24.5, and they won by 25. But again, what happens is when you have a defense, Kevin, that gives you short fields and scores touchdowns, you can beat spreads. And should they beat the spread? Should they win by 4 touchdowns? Yes. However, it's a border war. It's Illinois. The thing is, I normally say throw the records out in a rivalry game, but I don't really see this as a huge rivalry game. But Illinois is going to be pumped up for it. Unfortunately, with all the young players Illinois has, I really think you could see Wisconsin rack up 400 rushing yards in this game, Kevin. I mean that might be my stat of the week. I think Taylor is done in the third quarter. He's going to have his 23, 24 carries for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Paul Christ is like, we're going to save your legs. There's no need for you to be in this game anymore. I don't see it being close. I know I've been wrong in the past. I was wrong, way wrong last week on all my picks, but honestly, if Wisconsin – I'm not even saying this because I'm a Wisconsin fan. You have to look at how this defense is playing. It has progressively gotten better from week to week to week, and now they're playing a lesser talented team. I don't see that defense playing down to the level of Illinois and letting Illinois go down the field, up and down, up and down, up and down. They don't have the talent to do it. And defensively, I don't know how they stop the running game. I don't have, again, I'm not in front of a computer when we do our show. I don't have the stats, but I can imagine that skill-wise up front, Wisconsin is probably outweighing that front 4 probably by a lot, probably by a ton. And I don't know how you stop Wisconsin if you're Illinois. Maybe try to keep it close. I think 28's a lot of points, but I almost think Wisconsin can cover this, because I don't see how Illinois moves the ball against this Wisconsin defense, and I think it leads to a lot of short fields and a lot of running by Wisconsin. I think Hornibrook only has to throw it like 15 times, and that's maybe just to change the pace, because I really think Wisconsin could line up, Kevin, literally line up every play in a run power formation and just run the ball and still get done what they need to get done. That's my thought on this game.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Not going to say a lock of the week for this one on my end. Obviously, Wisconsin wins the game straight up, but like you, Wisconsin could win this game by at least 28, if not 40, because Illinois might not score and Wisconsin might score 42 points. I think that's possible. I'll move on to Rutgers at Michigan. There's not a lot of great games this week, I guess, within the Big Ten. In terms of intriguing matchups outside of Penn State, Ohio State, obviously. But Rutgers at Michigan, Michigan's favored by 23.5. And it's funny because Rutgers has won 2 straight, and Michigan's looked like crap the last 3 weeks. But here Michigan is as 23.5-point favorites. I think Michigan wins the game. I don't know if they win by 23.5. Athletically, they should win the game by 3 scores and a field goal and more.
Not happening. No. I'm not. I'm not. I mean, Michigan should win the game. 23.5. Holy hell. Holy hell. Have you been watching this Michigan offense? I mean, I think the Purdue offense is just as good as Michigan's right now. And they only mustered up, 14 against Rutgers?
12.
12. They 14, they would have tied it.
Yep.
So I think Michigan runs the ball better than Purdue, but I don't see Michigan winning this game by 23 or by 24 points. I don't, not even at home. That which means they will. So now that the old man said that, you should probably take Michigan and the points. But I'm not. I wouldn't lock this one in for me, Kevin.
Yeah. Would you take Rutgers and the points?
Probably not. And and here's the reason, that it's almost like that Wisconsin game. This Michigan defense is really good. Could they score 14 on defense? Yeah, they could.
Right.
Rutgers' offense isn't that good. But the thing is, you just watch the way they played, and now it's a Rutgers team, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Michigan win by 28. But the defense will have to help them out, and they could. See, so that's the thing. That's where my hesitation comes. Is that 5 weeks ago you would have said this game should have been like a 35-point line, but it's Michigan, and if that defense gets rolling against the poor Rutgers offense, they could shut Rutgers out, get short fields, and they could score 35. So, no, I wouldn't take Rutgers in the points. This is not a lock. It's not a lock on my side.
Yeah, there's not supposed to be many locks when it comes to Vegas. And when you think you have a lock, that's when Vegas pretty much wins their money. I'll move on. I agree, there's no lock there. Michigan State at Northwestern. I want to take Northwestern in this game. Northwestern is at home. Michigan State is 6-1. Michigan State feels good, but at the same time, they've got to wait a little bit to play this game. It's not a night game, but it's 3:30. And they have to travel and play Northwestern. And Michigan State's favored by 2.5 points. I will take Northwestern to win the game outright. I think Michigan State is about the same team as Northwestern, to be honest. Northwestern hasn't proven it necessarily week after week, but they proved it against Iowa that they can beat other middle-of-the-pack programs in the Big Ten. And I thought that before the year started. They proved it 2 days ago as we're recording this. So I think Northwestern at home gets it done. They'll be motivated to prove themselves against a top 25 team, quote-unquote. And it's a team, talent-wise, that is perfectly on Northwestern's level. That's why Michigan State's only favored by 2.5 points. So I like Northwestern in this game.
Lock of the week! Lock of the week right here! Go big or go home! Lock of the week!
And it's an upset.
I think you knew that about 45 minutes ago when I talked about Northwestern and Michigan State. Michigan State's so inconsistent that what happens during that 8-minute span when Northwestern takes advantage of Michigan State playing poorly? Northwestern's a team that can do that. Northwestern, even though they haven't been the most consistent, it is hard to go on the road and win in the Big Ten, especially when you're inconsistent. I think Michigan State goes down. Is Michigan State really 4-0 and really the 16th best team in the country? I don't think so. Too inconsistent. I think Northwestern straight up. I don't even need the points on this. I would have picked Northwestern straight up, but you're also going to be able to get Northwestern plus 2.5. You got to go with that. That's a lock. That's a lock for the Go Big or Go Home show right there, youngster.
There it is. There's our second one ever. It's funny because you look at, and I just look at ESPN as I'm doing this show, and if you look at the passing leader coming into this game, it's Clayton Thorson from Northwestern. The rushing leader, Justin Jackson from Northwestern. The receiving leader, Bennett Skowronek, who's like 6'5", is a sophomore receiver. He's from Northwestern. Northwestern's at home. I like Northwestern's defense a little bit, just like I like Michigan State's a little bit, but I like Northwestern's Justin Jackson. He's finally getting healthy. Mentioned a week ago that he is now Northwestern's all-time leading rusher. They're at home. I like this Northwestern team over Michigan State. They can certainly prove me wrong and go to 500 and lose to Michigan State, and Michigan State can be 7-1. But at Michigan State, would certainly feel less confident about it, would probably take Michigan State to win by a field goal. But at Northwestern, give me the Wildcats. I will move on to Indiana at Maryland. 2, 3, and 4 teams. This is a very unsexy game. Indiana is actually favored by 5 points on the road here. But Maryland has struggled mightily since they've gotten to their fourth-string quarterback. So I'm not, saying a lock one way or the other. It's weird, though, to see Indiana in a Big Ten game on the road favored by 5. That's not not Rutgers, even though Rutgers has won a couple in a row. It's weird to see, but I get it. When you're talking about a four-string quarterback, Maryland's gotten crushed the last few weeks. So I'm not expecting Maryland to do a whole heck of a lot here. I don't know who I would pick to win. I think Indiana's got the advantage because Maryland's down to their fourth-string quarterback, so I guess I'd pick Indiana to win. But I think this is a coin flip game.
Yeah, it's a pick'em game. I want to finally buy into this Indiana offense, but like you said, their quarterback play, what are they doing? Maybe they'll figure it out. If they could go deep on Maryland and stretch the field, I think they could take care of Maryland. Try to get into a shootout against a four-string quarterback from Maryland. That's what Indiana should try to do. I mean, really. And again, nothing against the kid from Maryland. He's been thrown into the fire. But Maryland offensively is so limited that if I'm Indiana, I'm trying to use my skill players and score as many points as I can. I don't need to be a jam it down your throat ball control offense against Maryland. Try to score and try to score quick and often. But again, it's a pick'em game. I can't figure Indiana out. Indiana probably should win the game, but I for this game, you could ask me tomorrow and I might pick Maryland. Then you ask me Wednesday, I might pick Indiana. But if I had to pick on the show right now, you said Indiana's giving 5. Yep. I would take Maryland. I would take Maryland in the points if I had to put $1 on it. You can see I'm a hefty bettor. If I had to put $1 on this game, I would take Maryland in the points.
Yeah, I think that'd be the way I would go as well. To both of us, it's a pick'em game. Indiana shouldn't be favored by 5. I think they win, but it probably is a field goal game one way or the other. Moving on, Minnesota at Iowa. Iowa's favored by 8. I think they're slightly the better team. They get to go home after going on the road against Northwestern and losing, so they'll be at home, happy, content to be at home, and it's kind of a night game. And playing a Minnesota team who has struggled, this is about right for me. I don't, not comfortable saying Iowa's going to win by double digits. I think they probably will, but wouldn't put a lock on it. I think Iowa wins the football game. They're the better team. They're at home. They should win.
2 mediocre teams playing, but I got to go with the home team on this one. It's a lot of points, though, with 2 mediocre teams. Minnesota has it. Minnesota has the ability to go to Iowa and win, but I haven't seen it. I just haven't seen it in the last 4 weeks. Iowa's mediocre. I just said it. I just went off on a tangent about Kirk Ferentz in the Iowa program. So this is 2 mediocre teams. That's a lot of points for 2 mediocre teams. I think Iowa will win at home because it's a home game, but don't be surprised if Minnesota went to Iowa and could win that game, Kevin. What else we got?
Nebraska at Purdue. That is a night game. This is the last one before the big one. Purdue's favored by 6. Not a lot that I have to say about this one. Purdue, I'll favor them again because they're at home. Think it's a field goal game either way. I don't like what Nebraska's been doing recently. I don't like what Purdue's been doing recently, but it's a night game. Purdue's the one at home. They should be able to feed off the crowd. They have the potential offensively. I think they win the game. 6 points, probably more than it should be. So I would, I guess, take Nebraska on the points if I had to bet it. But I'll take Purdue to win by probably a field goal. I guess that'll be my final comment on it.
Well, again, Purdue can move the ball between the 20s. They can move it. They just can't finish drives. That's a lot of points. I would take – so if I was betting $1 on this, again, I would probably take – if I was going straight up, it would probably be Purdue. If I had to give the points, I'd probably take Nebraska in the points. Purdue's having a problem getting in the end zone, Kevin, and they're having a problem even putting points on the board. So that's my thought. Let's move on. Last game. We got to get the listeners out of here, Kevin. Almost a 2-hour show today.
I know. Ridiculous. We didn't even talk much about the top 25, and yet this is our probably longest show ever that we've done on this show. Penn State at Ohio State. It's actually a 3:30 Eastern kickoff on Fox. So those of you looking forward to the night game, the big night game, it's actually in the afternoon. There's actually 4 really good games on at 3:30. Kind of stupid on Saturday. But the big one from the Big Ten, Penn State at Ohio State. Guess what the line is on this one, Troy, if you don't know what it is already.
I would say 3.5.
Favoring which team?
Favoring Penn State.
Ohio State's favored by 6 points.
That's crazy.
That's what I thought your reaction would be. Ohio State favored by basically a touchdown. Penn State, Ohio State would have to win this game by 7 or more points. If they win by 6 and they hit the spread right on the head, nothing happens to your money. You get it back. So Ohio State has to win by 7 or more. I think that even before the 5-game winning streak that Ohio State had recently, and they're coming off a bye, and Penn State's coming off this huge win over Michigan at home, whiteout game. Now they have to travel on the road, face a really good Ohio State team who's been humming for a month and a half, coming off a bye, gets to prepare for Penn State for 2 weeks. I still think Penn State wins the game. This is coming from an Ohio State fan. They've looked great over the last month and a half. Ohio State has to prove it to me. JT Barrett has to prove it to me that he can do it against an elite defense. Ohio State's defense has to prove it to me that they can do decent enough to hold down an elite offense, because they didn't against Oklahoma. I don't think they do so here. I think Penn State wins probably 31-24, 31-27. I think Penn State wins the game. Again, I'm an Ohio State fan. I love what JT Barrett has done over the last month and a half. I think this offense has grown. It has gotten better. I don't think it's crap that they've crushed teams 5 in a row by 30-plus points. I think that does mean something. But against Penn State, they've got to prove it to me before I really start picking Ohio State hard going forward against elite teams. They didn't do it against Clemson last year. They didn't do it even against Penn State last year. So this year, I think Penn State's as good as they've been. I don't think Ohio State's offense has gotten better than they were last year. So to me, nothing's changed. Ohio State's at home. Yes, the schedule favors them in terms of coming off a bye. Penn State having to go on the road after a huge night home game. I get it. Psychologically, Ohio State, scheduling-wise, it favors them. But definitely take Penn State in the points. And I think Penn State wins outright.
Okay. Yeah, the second lock, we got 2 locks this week, Kevin. 2 locks.
Cool.
Penn State's got too many weapons. Too many weapons. I know it's at Ohio State, but Penn State has too many weapons. Ohio State being favored, yeah, you're given points. I think Penn State wins a close one. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. No. I think it's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch it. But I think Penn State ekes this one out. Like you said, I'm taking Penn State straight up, and now they're getting points, so you got to take Penn State. 2 locks this week, Kevin. And with that, almost 2 hours into Go Big or Go Home, we are done. We're going to let the listeners go. Thanks for listening in. Find Kevin on Twitter at KidCunny, KIDCUNI. Find me, the old man, at TroyRobert967. Or follow our show handle at Youngster Old Man. Thanks for listening in. We'll get back at you next week. Have a good week, everyone.